something?
Yes, I could clearly see that. Just as we're going through the exercise, I could see that we're playing with an energy thing, and I've been playing with a lot of circular and spiral energies for a long time. And I was like, that's a motor. If we just do that, that'll add additional power. You know, like a
Well, we can
secondary.
try it out next week. In the meantime, if you have a chance to do it with your triad, you might play around with it, and we'll go from there. Okay, well, good point, Rick. Any other comments or questions? Look like Sharon joined us. Welcome, Sharon. Okay, well, there's no more comments or questions. We'll go ahead with the white magic lesson. I'll reread again Rule 10. As the waters bathe the form created, they are absorbed and used. The form increases in its strength. Let the magician thus continue until the work suffices. Let the outer builders cease their labors then, and let the inner workers enter on their cycle. It's not a really long rule, but this is, I think, the longest explanation of any of the rules. It's going to take us a few lessons to get through it. And we left off where he's talking about the centers. And he says that for the disciple, there are particular centers that are important for him at this point of evolution. The first, he says, is the ajna center. That's the center between the eyebrows. And he says that through this center, the purified personality expresses itself. Notice he says a purified personality. So the ajna center begins to develop as the aspirant becomes a sincere seeker and begins to do productive work and begins to progress upon the path. And this center, he begins to become a seer, so to speak, and the fact that he sees a lot more than average people see, and he sees and understands through this center, which is often called the third eye. The second center, he says, which is important to the disciple, is the one at the base of the spine. It's a center through which complete and utter control and coordination is achieved. And through the agency of fire, this is the one through which the Kundalini eventually rises, where you it links heaven and earth within your own being, connects you to, makes a stronger connecting link to your soul. The next is the sacral center. This is a center where in the basic, it says it's the basic force of our solar system. The force of attraction of form to form is transmuted, and the attractive force of the soul takes the place of the reproductive creative activity. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, where for the disciple, what he has to do is raise these creative energies, because the sacral center governing sex is pretty amazing when you figure that it's responsible for creating physical bodies. And the creation of physical body is no small feat. It's an amazing thing. Even the hardened atheist has to admit it's the creation of a baby is pretty amazing. And anyone who's been at the birth of their first child has to stand in awe of the fact that of the miracle of birth. It's quite an amazing thing to experience. And so anyway, even though that is amazing, even more amazing is lifting up the energy to the throat center. The throat center and the sacral center are very closely connected. They're both centers of creativity, but the throat center is a higher source of creativity. And the great artists and writers and painters and musicians and architects and people that are doing creative work are functioning through this center. And so instead of And what these creative people do, instead of putting all their creative energies or their building energies on their sacral center, which governs sex, they take at least a portion of that energy up and transmute it into creativity, so they can create other things besides physical bodies. And so this is an important step for the disciple, is to stimulate his creative energies. And the other important center, he says, is the solar plexus center. And this is the center whereon is the organ of the astral body, and the organ, it governs lower psychism, gathers together all the lower forces and redirects them under the impulse of the soul to the heart center. So the heart center and the solar plexus are very connected, just like the throat center and the sacral center are very connected. So the heart center is a higher correspondence to the solar plexus. So the solar plexus, what the disciple has to do is seek to control those astral energies and put them under the control of the heart center. So they're governed by spiritual love rather than lower desire. And that lower desire is pretty tough to overcome. It's very highly connected with the ego. A feeling of self-importance produces all kinds of glamours. So the disciple has to overcome these things so he can raise the lower material desire up to a spiritual desire. And when he's focused on the spiritual desire, then he begins to tune in to the Christ within, the higher aspect of love and wisdom. And that's important to realize that the heart center isn't just the center of love, but it's a center of love and wisdom. And then you have a reflection of the heart center in the head. So love and wisdom it connects everything, mind and emotion, and makes a connection for your whole being. So your heart center is extremely important. So he says, in addition to these centers, the the 7 rays adds to the complexity. He says he gives here keys for each of ray methods. He says, we must remember that to will is a prerogative of the spirit. To know is a function of the soul. To dare is the duty of the personality. And to be silent is the ultimate dharma and destiny of the matter aspect. And to be silent is connected with the sacral center. In other words, we must learn to still that so it doesn't control us, so that we can focus on on the higher aspects of the centers. And then he gives key sentences on all of the 7 rays. The first ray, as you remember, is governed by willpower and purpose, are the trinity of aspects around this first ray. And it's very potent. And he says it's so potent we don't even have the first ray people incarnated right now. We have people that tap into aspects of the first ray, but not pure first ray souls. He says they're very powerful and would be almost too much destructive energy. So what the first ray does is it destroys everything in the way of spirit. So if we had first ray very potent around the earth right now, it'd probably wipe out a lot of things on the planet to make way for spiritual forces. So the first ray has to be implemented step by step and with not too much at one time. Donald Trump has quite a bit of first ray energy. That's why he's so disruptive, you know. Now, first ray isn't always bad or good. It can be either one, but it's always disruptive. And it disrupts the order of things as they are. And so here's the key sentence around the first ray energy. Let the forces come together. Let them mount to the high place, and from that lofty eminence, let the soul look upon a world destroyed. Then let the word go forth. I still persist. Okay, so it's the destroyer aspect. And so the first ray comes and it destroys everything in the way of spirit, but the word goes forth, I still persist. The
Isn't
second,
it? Is
yeah,
that like when God spoke and He said, "I created new heavens and a new earth"? Doesn't that be first ray? Or
right. To create a new heavens and new earth, you'd have to have exercise the first ray energy, destroying the old heavens and
right?
old earth. Good point.
Which might not appear to some people to be a good thing,
Yeah.
destroy old forms. And Jesus, I think, tapped in, even though he was second ray, didn't he tap into a lot of first ray when he taught you can't put new wine in old bottles and destroyed the thinking of
Right.
the
He was actually sixth ray, and yeah, he tapped into some first ray energy, especially in the Garden of Gethsemane, where he uh, tapped into Shambhala, and so yeah, the first ray energy is very powerful. It was some first ray, which was called Shambhala energy, was released just before World War II, and look what happened there. And the hierarchy was thinking that the good guys would pick up on that first ray energy, and instead Hitler did, and we had a, a life and death fight on our hands because of that. And you got to remember that all these energies in their pure form are not good or bad. They can be picked up by people of good or bad intention. So in their purest form, they're good. But when there's Hitler picked up a step down first ray energy, and he led us into World War II. So the hierarchy is very careful about releasing this first ray energy. They just do it at certain times when they feel humanity can take a step forward. And then the second ray is love, wisdom, that's governed by the heart, and this governs our whole solar system. Our sun is built on second ray energy, and all other rays are sub-rays of this second ray. Now, our sun is a second ray solar system, and it's a member of 6 other star systems, creating each one representing one of the 7 rays. And so the other star system, like Sirius, would be one, representing other rays. So everything in our solar system is closely connected to the second ray, which the end result of our evolution here is to the stimulation of higher consciousness. Consciousness is very closely linked to this second ray. And what he writes around this is, let all life be drawn to the center and enter thus into the heart of love divine. And then from that point of sentient life, let the soul realize the consciousness of God. Let the word go forth reverberating through the silence. Naught is but me. Well, that sounds like kind of egotistical thing when you say naught is but me, but when you realize that there's just one life pervading the whole universe and you're one with it, from looking at it from that point of view, there is naught but you, because you are connected to all. Okay, the third ray is connected with intelligence and matter, and it's another very powerful ray connected with the Holy Spirit, so to speak. Let the army of the Lord responsive to the word, cease their activities. Let knowledge end in wisdom. Let the point vibrating become the point quiescent, and all lines gather into one. Let the soul realize the one in the many, and let the word go forth in perfect understanding. I am the worker and the work, the one that is. You are the worker and the work. Interesting statement. Fourth ray is a ray of harmony through conflict, governs creative energies. And the mantra around that is, let the outer glory pass away and the beauty of the inner light reveal the one. Let dissonance give way to harmony, and from the center of the hidden light, let the soul speak. Let the word roll forth. Beauty and glory veil me not. I stand revealed. I am. Okay, the fifth is the fifth ray governs concrete science and thought. And the key sentence phrase behind this is, let three forms of energy, electric, pass upward to the place of power. Let the forces of the head and heart and all the nether aspects blend. Then let the soul look out upon the inner world of light divine. Let the word triumphant go forth. I mastered energy, for I am energy itself. The master and the mastered are but one. You notice a common thread through all these key sentences is that the oneness between you and what you're working on. You and the work are one, the master and the mastered are one. The sixth ray, which governs the astral world and the emotional feeling side of ourselves. The key sentence behind this is, let all desires cease. Let aspirations end. The search is over. Let the soul realize that it has reached the goal. And from that gateway to eternal life and cosmic peace, let the word sound forth. I am the seeker and the sought. I rest. Again, he's blending the two. You are the seeker, and you're also the one that is sought. And you rest when you do. You come to that realization. The seventh ray is called the ray of order or ceremonial magic, governs ceremony and structure. Let the builders cease their work. The temple is completed. Let the soul enter into its heritage, and from the holy place command all work to end. Then in silence subsequent, let him chant forth the word. The creative work is over. I, the creator, am. Naught else remains but me. So those are interesting sentences. Felt I needed to read them word for word because they can't really be summarized in any way. There's a lot of meat in each one, but it's interesting how each one ends with connecting you to what is normally the work of God or God itself, and with the statement that you and the work or the master or the life is one. And it's an interesting statement. He says he ends with, naught else remains but me. In a way, that's interesting to contemplate, because as you're progressing along the path, you always reach certain points where everything just depends on you. there's nobody else to depend on except yourself at certain key points in your life. And so that's it's important that when you do reach those key points, that you reach within your own reservoir of ability and talent and intelligence, and solve the greatest problems that will come to you in your life. Because sometimes that's how we have to reach our maximum growth. Okay, he says, many vital forces pass through the ethers of space, linking us all. This accounts for the forces of astrology and oneness. Now, a couple hundred years ago, everybody thought that in space there was this ether, and because of ethers was a medium through which light and things traveled, and then the scientists started looking for this ether and they couldn't find it. And so they concluded that in space it was just a vacuum, there wasn't anything there. And now they're starting to find out that there's no such thing as a vacuum, there's always something there. So some of them are coming back around to figuring out there must be ethers after all, and the ancient wisdom teaches that there is ethers. There's ethers everywhere, and these ethers do connect all the life in the universe. And within the universe, of course, there's pockets where the ethers are concentrated, like in our solar system. The ethers connect all of the planets and the lives within and within the planets themselves, and within the sun, because there's life everywhere. You have to remember, even on places that seem really rocky and dead, there's life within matter itself. And each one of the planets is a life unto itself, and it's on a different time frame and everything, so it's on a consciousness level that the average person can't even really fathom. And he says this accounts for astrology, because the ethers connect all life, all the planets, and then the planets are connected to our centers, pick up energies from the planets, and this is, he says, what makes astrology work. And he says astrology works best on the average person. He says it's quite accurate because the average person picks up various energies from the various planets, and the astrologer is often quite remarkable in how he can predict the behavior of an average person. But he says that once a person becomes a disciple and in contact with the soul, then he's not very predictable by an astrologer, because he doesn't necessarily go along with the natural flow. You know, he kind of makes his own flow, kind of like Curtis there. He makes his own flow all the time.
Well, the ethers they're called the creative waters, the waters of creation, where your sound, where your words have so much power.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about last time, is we're over 80% water, and
about 87%.
Right.
But, you know, people looking for the ethers is kind of like a fish trying to say to another fish, there is no such thing as water.
Yeah.
When they're swimming in it.
Yeah, fish doesn't even know he's in water.
Doesn't know he's in water. Like most people don't know that they're in not as a substance, not as dense as water, but it's still a substance. The ethers still have substance.
Yeah.
Inner substance.
Right, and he says these energies pass through the ethers, and then they go through our 7 centers. And he says there's a number of centers which are unknown, and but these are fairly minor centers. I think we talked about that a little bit last time. He kind of repeats that a little bit. But circulation of the centers differs depending on the quality of the etheric body in the centers. And healing energy is transmitted if the forces are unimpeded. And so this is one of the problems with healing, is that thoughts are things, so to speak, and thoughts move energy. And because of our thoughts and feelings, we have blockages of energy sometimes. And so he says we can have near perfect health if we can keep this flow of energy from being blocked. So if the energy flows unimpeded, then the health of the disciple will be much improved. So the disciple is responsive to the 7 rays within the second ray. Remember, he says you always got to remember that the second ray governs the solar system, and we go back to the when you think of, say, God the All, the one great life, you think of the 1 ray divides into the 3, divides into the 7, creates galaxies and star systems and everything. And what created our star system is the second ray. So from there, each one of we have 7 sacred planets, all governed by one of the 7 rays. And they're all sub-rays of this second ray. So he says that's important to always keep in mind, that the second ray of love wisdom is of supreme importance in our solar system. It would be interesting to see what the other solar systems by the other rays, how their life is different from ours because they're on a different ray. The work of the disciple is to arrive at understanding of these forces and to learn their nature and to use, their potency and vibration rate. He has also to learn to recognize their source and be able to differentiate between forces, energies, and rays. Okay, there's all kinds of different forces and energies out there, and they all have like you might say, a different flavor, a different vibration. So as the disciple encounters these different forces, he says it's important to that he be able to differentiate between them. Forces come from matter, he says, and energy is more, the word energy is more associated with the soul. But both energies can be, the soul energies can be stepped down and differentiate into forces. And the rays give coloring and flavor to forces and energy. So you have energy, what he calls is pure spiritual energy with the soul. And it comes down, and soul energy actually gives form to all matter, but it's kind of transmuted in what he calls forces. So forces is more linked to form, and energy more linked to the spiritual side. The mission of the human kingdom is to transmit energy to the lower kingdoms, while the hierarchy is to step down the higher spiritual energies, the solar energies, and transmute it to us so that we can take the energies and transmute them to the lower kingdoms. He says man is actually the savior of the lower kingdoms, even though we're portrayed by our environmentalists as being very destructive. Our destiny is to make a heaven on earth. And we haven't learned how to do that yet. And as we're in the process of learning, we have a lot of mistakes. Just like anytime you learn something, you make a lot of mistakes, and humanity is making their share. But humanity is actually a midway point for energy. So we at the midway point receive higher energies from the hierarchy, and we take these energies and we give them out to the animal kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, and the mineral kingdom. And all these lower kingdoms, he says, are actually influenced by us, and they experience changes in their evolution because of the energies that we send forth to them. We not only
that's kind of like what Rick was saying, where you take your left hand and you're receiving from side, you're receiving from the higher spiritual realm, and you take your right hand and you're passing it down into transmitting it down to the lower kingdom. So you're we're actually, isn't humanity the heart center, the love center that's receiving and sending at the same time?
Yeah, humanity is a throat center, and the hierarchy is the heart center. But yeah, we're kind of intermediate though, because we're kind of in between the higher and lower. The hierarchy contacts these really high points of contact, like the solar logos and the planetary logos and Kumaras and all these high entities. And they look for points of contact among humanity to distribute this energy. And then us, as disciples, we go forth and pass these energies along to other people. And then humanity as a whole passes these energies to
The
lower
lesser kingdoms.
Right. And we do it unseen and seen. Like we will take the animals and we will do things. We will help them develop. Like, look at how many different species of dogs we have now that we didn't have a couple thousand years ago, because we've taken dogs as pets, for instance, and dogs in particular, a lot more than cats or any other animal. And you ever watch these dog shows they have? My wife just loves these dog shows on TV. They're so cute. But it's amazing how different all these dogs look. And they've wasn't by accident. We bred them over a period of time, and we take them in as animals, as pets, and we're nourishing them, stimulating their consciousness so that they eventually will develop self-consciousness. And so we're stimulating them. And so he says it's all part of the plan for us to take in these pets and to nourish them, because we're stimulating their evolution. Tibetan has a cute term for pets. He calls them our little brothers, which I thought that was a sweet term. And they are kind of our little brothers when you look at it.
I think we're doing the same thing with computers.
Yeah. Well, computers is a brand new life form we're creating.
Yeah.
Right. And wait for another couple hundred years, we're going to see actually a new life form develop. Because think, Rick, now Rick's an experimental guy. Now suppose you're on the other side and they develop a robot body, not necessarily an android body, that's has capacity much more than Rick's body has now. I bet you Rick might think, well, I wouldn't mind incarnating into that thing.
Yeah, I'll take it for a test drive.
So, if we start making android bodies efficient enough, people would be attracted, volunteer to jump into them. And
yeah, hey, and they never wear out.
Yeah.
Immortality.
You lose an arm, you just replace it with another one.
From a lot of sources, I've heard that's basically what they call the Greys, the aliens.
Right. That's what they say.
They are just androids. That person that's going to want to deal with physical puts one of these on, and then he's able to do physical things.
Right, and that's one of the things we're thinking of doing with Mars is creating artificial intelligence to go to Mars and build things there, and instead of regular life forms, which would take a lot more expense in producing a shelter for them. And so our space agencies and even private industries thinking very seriously about exploring the planets using artificial intelligence. They're also thinking of mining asteroids with artificial intelligence. There's an asteroid out there they found that was almost pure plutonium, which is worth trillions of dollars in today's money, that they're very interested in mining. So, of course, if we brought the whole asteroid here, plutonium, not plutonium, but how come I said plutonium? Platinum. It was platinum.
Yeah,
so
platinum.
Not plutonium, but it's almost pure platinum. And so, yeah, if they brought the whole asteroid here, platinum would be so have so much of it that it probably wouldn't be worth anything. Same thing if we found an asteroid made of pure gold, you know, or pure diamonds or whatever. Who knows what we might find? But they have found one they think is pretty much has a lot of platinum in it. But anyway, he says other types of energy are astral energy, energy of the lower concrete mind, or the cheetah, or what he calls mind stuff. And then next is the energy of the personality, and then planetary energy. And then the highest energy available to us is solar energy, or what he calls the life breath. And first of all, he talks about astral energy, which is something that's really consumes us a lot, because it's kind of the dominant energy of humanity that we causes us problems and stimulates us. It's behind desire and everything. And he says astral energy emanates from a man's own astral or his feeling or sentient body. It also, astral energy comes from the human family as a whole. And then it also comes from the astral plane. We have the physical plane, which we see around us, and above this is the astral plane composed of feeling energy. And then he says it comes, the highest source of astral energy is what he calls from the heart of the sun. Then we have mental energy, and the mental energy is, he calls it the mind stuff, and it's the mentality of the human family as a whole, and it also governs a whole race will be influenced by a certain mindset, and this is one of the things that makes people of different races think and act just a little bit differently. People say that, you know, or trying to say we're all the same. We're really not all the same. Each individual is a little different. Each race is a little different. And each nation is a little different because they have different rays and different influences.
And they create different thought forms on that plane.
Right. And then we have the mental plane as a whole. So we have the physical, the astral, and then the next step up is the mental. And the mental plane is connected to what he calls the universal mind. Then he tabulates the personality energy, which is a coordinated form of man. The personality, when he talks about the personality, he's talking about the influences of the physical, astral, and mental kind of all combined into one. Advanced human beings who are dominant personalities gravitate into groups and have group thought. And the hierarchy of the planet is connected to this, and the integrating group of mystics is connected to the personality energy of the planet. And then he talks about planetary energy, and this emanates from the 7 planets, the 7 sacred planets. And people that haven't read the Tibetan often think of the Earth as being the most advanced planet in the solar system because we're the only one we know of that has life on it, and it's the most beautiful planet. But according to DK, there are 7 sacred planets which are very evolved, and the Earth is not one of them. So the Earth is approaching the point where it will make a transmutation into being a sacred planet. But it's kind of lagging behind the 7 sacred planets of our solar system. And then we have the solar energy, which emanates from the physical sun. And the sun acts, he says, as a transmitter of cosmic rays. cosmic rays, he says, are actually transmitters of the seven energy from the seven rays. So that's a tabulation on that he gives that covered there. Next, he goes into astral energy and fear. The astral is the body of which man is preeminently polarized, and which he is more potently conscious than any other body. The etheric body, he says, which is kind of an interesting statement, is below the threshold of consciousness. And he says we only really are aware of the etheric body is when you feel out of sorts, when you get sick or something, then you kind of feel out of sorts, and then you actually kind of tune into your etheric body. But he says what's going on that regulates everything in your etheric body regulates everything in your physical. So, for instance, your heart's beating away, your lungs breathe, your liver's working away. All these things are happening through the etheric energy, and you're not even aware it's going on. But he says astral energy is different. He says this is where our focus of attention is on the feeling energy. And we're only aware of the etheric energy, like it says, if you feel out of sorts. If you're feeling out of sorts, then you kind of are tuning in to your etheric body. But outside of that, if everything's going normal, you're not paying any attention to it. But where we are paying attention is on our feeling side. You're aware if you're feeling something. You're aware if you're feeling love. You're aware if you're feeling happy or sad or miserable or cold or hot or whatever. But your feeling nature is where our center of consciousness is, and it's also the center of where many of the problems we have to deal with are. He says the astral energy is part of a greater whole. The human is part of the planetary logos, which is part of the aspect of the solar logos, which is part of the still greater life. Man is a meeting ground of the higher and lower, and there are many yet energies of which he is not aware. He constructs his own individual and separate astral body, responsive to his peculiar note, colored by his peculiar quality, and limiting him or not according to the point of evolution. He continues, this constitutes his astral ring past naught, defining the limits of his emotional response to life experience. Okay, it's interesting. So he tells us then that this feeling nature of ours, we have all kinds of emotions, we have fears, we have jealousies, we have negative feelings, and we're fully aware of all these things. And he says there are actually feeling energies beyond our consciousness. We have a ring past naught for our feeling energies. So this is an interesting thing to contemplate. What are feelings? What are what could we be aware of in our feeling nature that's beyond our ring past naught? That's an interesting thing to think about. You know, when we think about all the things that do affect us, fear is a big one, which he talks about in a few minutes. But fear, hate, love, aspiration, all these things are connected with the feeling energy. But he talks about a ring past naught, so that kind of got my mind going as to what is it that we could feel that we are not yet feeling? What is it that maybe the masters pick up and feel that we don't feel?
Oneness.
Well, a deeper inner peace, maybe.
Yeah, oneness, that's probably a lot of it. And right, maybe the peace that passes understanding, that's one that's beyond the average person. That's a good point.
Well, they've learned to be still, be still and know that I'm God. They've still their emotions, still the mind, still.
What about joy? Joy.
That's a good one. Joy, we as normal human beings understand happiness, but there's points of joyousness that we have probably never experienced. You have a lot of people have a near-death experience. They said they had a feeling of love and joy that they never had upon the earth. So that's perhaps, there's probably feelings of love and joy that's beyond the average person's ring pass nod here upon the earth that could be available as we evolve and come closer to spirit. Interesting thing to think about. Now he says the astral body has counterparts to the centers, which receive energy from the sun and planets, making astrology accurate for average people. So we talk about the 7 centers, but we not only have the 7 centers in the physical operating through the etheric body, but then you also have another set of 7 centers that are in our feeling nature. So you have, there's a counterpart to them in the astral. And he says, one frees himself from the wheel of rebirth when he raises his desire from self to the will of God or the Logos. Okay, so we can free ourselves from the wheel of rebirth if we take our lower desire, our lower feeling nature, and focus it on higher will. Higher will produces, picking up higher will produces a certain feeling, stimulation of our feeling also, which is beyond the normal ring pass nod. And he says, when the disciple picks up this higher will and commits to following it, then he can free himself from the wheel of rebirth. Metaphorically speaking, the experience that lies ahead on the path is covered in the following esoteric phrases. I'll read this. When the stream enters the river of life, its passage can be traced for a short moment and then is lost. When the currents of sentient life meet where the river passes round the mountain's massive foot, then one vast stream is seen which floweth north. And he says what this is talking about is a stream of life energy. You have 2 major streams of life energy going up and down the spine. And the mountain's massive foot is the skull, which he calls the Mount of Golgotha. And he says there is a meeting place where sacrifice is enacted. And when this is, he points out a key to overcoming the lower nature and then focusing on the higher. And any questions on that so far?
So what that means then is you can have possessions, just not be attached to them to the point that they control your.
Yeah, one thing I like about him, he always goes back and explains that, you know, we have to live in the real world. And he says that people that can't take care of themselves on the physical plane are of no use to God or man, pretty much. He says we have to take care of business on the physical plane, yet be able to keep enough focus on the spiritual to have our main point of focus there, but have enough focus on the material plane to take care of business and take care of our loved ones and our responsibilities here. So he's pretty practical about taking care of regular business. Sometimes when he gets on a high, speaking of spiritual things, you wouldn't think that, but then he goes back and he talks about the importance of that, you know, disciples do have to live in the real world and take care of physical things and live, you know, his life. If he's married, he has to have responsibilities to his family and different things. So he's pretty practical about those things. Okay, we're reaching the end of the session. Any other comments or questions?
have you read that Esoteric Apprentice book?
I read a chapter of it that was told how they worked and everything.
Oh,
Yeah, I haven't read the whole thing.
I was going to ask for your thoughts on it, but I guess another time.
Yeah, well, it looks like they use some of the similar procedure to what we do in their meditation. They see themselves in a circle and then feel ball of light coming down, and quite similar to what we're doing. So probably produces some results, I would imagine. And yeah, any type of group work like that can be beneficial to the group members. So I encourage any of that type of activity. The key there, what you want to do is, as you're doing group work, is just experiment with it and see what works best. Okay, any other comments or questions?
I just posted the illustration of the rainbow stars on the molecular chat group, Facebook.
Okay. Okay, good. We'll take a look at it. Okay, well, let's end by saying the great invocation, then we'll call it a day. Om, 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 om. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Repeat, let light and love and power restore the plan on earth.
So be it, and so it is.
Amen and hallelujah, brother.
Okay, glad all you guys showed up. Appreciate you being here and making a good group vibration for us all. And we will see you next Sunday at 2 o'clock, all being well. Mountain
Thank you,
Standard.
Be well.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you, Maria. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye.
JJ. Thank you, everybody.
Hasta la
Love and light,
vista.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
See you next week.
See you next week.
See you next week.